you were working strategy consulting, doing all these classical, maybe business school things. I would be wondering, was there a particular experience or moment, maybe even life-changing moment for you that paved the way, to bring you into the content music world after having, worked previously in more of a traditional setup?
A really key turning point in my career, I think, was when I experienced like burnout, like exhaustion, which was in my mid-20s, was more than 10 years ago now, and I had a framework that was basically from when I was a teenager to my early 20s, which was just work harder than everybody else. Just whatever everybody else is doing, like double it.
What role do you think real life connection plays in, let's say, the broader media, music, and community landscape?
The thing that's really exciting is like historically we've looked at like physical businesses and things like this as very separate to online, right? And there's been like the digital world and the online companies in the online world, and in reality I think this is going to be like a hybrid. So I'm really excited by, and I'm inspired by, a lot of the founders that I meet that are building new businesses that recognize the duality of this, and they're building, for example, Keep Hush, another company that I've invested in, organizes raves all around the world. Millions of people tune into their events, and what they do, which I think is incredible, is they spotlight cutting edge musicians and DJs and artists from around the world in places like Kazakhstan, India, Japan, Colombia, these types of places.
Welcome to Be Well. Today I'm joined by Bradley Orford-Hall, founder of xRave Ventures, which he describes as the business partner of choice for disruptors in music, media, and community. Brad has been working in the new media and creator economy world for a while now. Originally started out as a strategy consultant, then worked nearly 6 years at Spotify as well, where he led global music content. And now he's building and investing in what comes next in music, media, and community. I think Brad has a lot of interesting insights here for our audience. And I'm particularly excited about his career story. And he's very open and frank about it. And I would love to learn more about your career, but also your perspectives on whatever is happening in media and in the music and community world. Brad, maybe before jumping into these big discussions, would you maybe like to introduce yourself and share a couple of words about your background and share what made you essentially to the person you are today?
Yeah, thank you, Toby. So hey, my name's Brad. I'm founder and CEO of xRave Ventures, and I am a curious human. I guess first and foremost, I've done a lot of different things. But I guess to tell you where I am right now in my life journey, xRave Ventures, I basically set out with this mission to find the most unhinged, crazy founders all over the world who are innovating, basically at the edge of media and culture. This is something that's been very important to me. We'll get into it in my kind of life story and life journey, but I think media platforms are super important. And so I noticed that there's a gap between this area of society and the kind of business world and kind of investing and getting funding. And then very few people kind of understand. We understand these things when they become very mainstream, but when anybody is doing something differently, especially in kind of media and culture space, people don't really get it. And my goal is to connect the people who are doing with the people who get it and who can finance these things. So that's what xRave Ventures is, and we can get into it in the conversation. But I arrived at this point after exploring a lot of different things in my personal and business life. I worked in finance, I worked in management consulting, I learned a little bit about capitalism. I started out my career trying to just get money for myself, doing all of the things that are the traditional successful things, realizing that those things didn't bring me fulfillment, seeking more deeper kind of alignment with my interests. I'm also a musician. I've grown up with music, so I'm very connected to the creator space. And I've lived in a lot of different countries as well and traveled to a lot of different countries. So through that, I think this is why I'm so passionate about platforms that bring different people together, different ideas, different expression, different culture, different art, and the power that can do for us as like a global community. So
Amazing.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a
Great.
summary, I guess.
Great, great, great. No, I mean, it's my job to follow up then. And I think it's a great
Yeah.
introduction to whatever you're doing right now. I'll be wondering, I mean, oftentimes I know how you've experienced it because you just also alluded to sort of your prior experiences, right? Or your prior trajectory in your, let's say, professional life. You were working strategy consulting, doing all these classical, maybe business school things. I would be wondering, was there a particular experience or moment, maybe even life-changing moment for you that paved the way, to bring you into the content music world after having, worked previously in more of a traditional setup?
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been several, honestly, and I think it's a constant process. I think a really key turning point in my career, I think, was when I experienced like burnout, like exhaustion, which was in my mid-20s, was more than 10 years ago now. But I remember I was having this conversation with somebody the other day where like you have a certain framework that like gets you so far, and like you need to learn how to update and adapt your framework. And I had a framework that was basically from when I was a teenager to my early 20s, which was just work harder than everybody else, just whatever everybody else is doing, like double it. Like don't like there was no aspect to what I was doing which was about like intentionality or like do things that bring you energy or be around people that you're aligned with or things like this. There was none of this. It was just like whatever you do, like just work harder than everybody else and just win everything all the time. And that worked until it didn't, like that worked until it got to a point where, I was pushing my body beyond what even like would make sense. So like for anybody, and I really had to experience like my body talking back to me and being like, yo, like, bro, like if you keep going this way, like you're gonna have like a heart attack or you're gonna have like something. And then when I was confronted with that, when I was forced to think about taking care of myself, because I think that was the thing. I know you've spoken with other people that specifically like do businesses on self-care and things like that. But I think until that point, there was nothing in my life which was related to like self-care. There was nothing related to balance or like sustainable growth or like, where you can really draw energy from and things like this. And so it was like, oh shit, it's like a car. If you don't take care of it, you can fuck it up. And so that experience for me, where I was forced to pause, and I was very, very lucky because a lot of people who experience that, they do much more damage, long-term damage. Luckily for me, I had just gone a little bit too far, and it was like, yo, you need to sit down a little bit and maybe don't, work every single day of the week, every day without a holiday for like years or whatever until you start feeling like you're going to have a stroke. And it was then that I was like, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve in my life? Like, what type of life am I trying to build for myself? Am I actually like even happy, in this state? And am I actually interested in what I'm doing? And it was really after that that I was like, you need to apply everything you've learned, but in areas that you actually give a fuck, like that you care about and that you're interested in, rather than just trying to outcompete everyone all the time in everything without thinking about what you're doing. It was like, you'll never be the best in the world at something that you fundamentally don't care about. So what do you care about? And for me, that led me to the creator economy, to media and music, because that was this passion that I'd had and it was so integrated into my life, but I wasn't incorporating it into the main part of my career. So I would say that that was like a real turning point before my decision. Because like people will say, oh, he was at Spotify and da 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 da, and it will look very obvious now, but at the time, it was not a career decision that looked like it made sense. And I quit my job in consulting without having anything to go to, which looked crazy to everybody. I worked at another startup because I was like, I need tech experience, which wasn't a product that I was super, super passionate about, but I just wanted to work at a tech company. And I quit that within 6 months. So then I was like, now I'm looking really crazy, you know? And so my career was really looking crazy, and I was really not looking like somebody that was kind of making the right choices. Everybody would have expected me to go into private equity, which is what all my friends were doing, and which I almost did. Uh, and so, you know, you have to do things that are a little bit unconventional. And then it was only when I chose myself and my interests that I had this incredible next chapter of my life, living around the world with Spotify and learning all about media platforms and like being at the front of that development. So that was really incredible. But you have to bet on yourself and your own interests.
Amazing. Very interesting to hear that story. I think maybe one thing, and then I would love to move forward also to whatever you're building right now and what sparked sort of the desire to build in the creator and media space. I mean, we connected through LinkedIn, and what I find quite interesting is that you're very open about your career moves, right? You just mentioned it, right? That you went to a tech startup, you worked there only 6 months. And back then that would have looked from the outside, hey, a
Looked
bit
terrible.
exactly. I mean, people would have said, okay, maybe would have thought, hey, it's a bit lost.
And I
and
quit on my birthday, you know?
you quit on your birthday.
Yeah,
Oh, I mean,
yeah,
you're not sugarcoating anything, right? You're open about rejections, uncertainties,
yeah.
moments where things didn't work out the way uh, you intended them to be. What
Yeah.
made you want to share your journey that openly?
Do you know what? I think I did it partially for myself and partially because we're in like this hyper feed. I know a lot of the people I speak to, like if you open your LinkedIn on any given day, you're just only seeing the positive things, right? You're seeing every day like somebody's raised like $100 million. Like the velocity is crazy. But we only see the successful things. And also I think because we're in a period where people are so economically stressed and a lot of people are scared of losing their jobs and things like we have this performance, I think, a lot of the time on LinkedIn where people are like performing. And I remember like when I joined LinkedIn, like a long time ago, almost 15 years ago when it was new and it was so different, right? And it was really, really awesome because it was like, oh, you can connect with people around the world that are doing things that inspire you. But now, you know, you have this content feed of a lot of like performative content and it's so kind of inauthentic. And so I think it was a combination of seeing so much of that, conversations I've had with other people, knowing that there's also people on this platform that, you know, feel like they're in a certain point in their career, they're trying to find answers. And then knowing my own journey and how my journey might look to other people. And I think also because I'm doing my own thing now and I'm building xRave Ventures, like many people who start their own businesses, you have like up days and you have down days. And so I think part of it was also to remind myself, you know, when you have a down day, it's like reminding yourself how much shit you've eaten all the way. Sometimes when people are going through like difficult periods in their career, and I have this conversation with other people when I'm trying to like motivate people, is, you know, it's very easy to concentrate on like one setback or like something's gone wrong. But like what you really need to do at that point is zoom out and take account of like, you know, eating shit and facing challenges is like not a new thing for like a lot of people. And so, you know, I wrote that really to just let everybody know that me and you and like everybody, you know, having setbacks and eating shit is just like comes with the territory. And like it's something that is there from the very beginning and is going to be there until the very end. And really, what you need to do is just build a very strong muscle in learning how to like eat shit and keep going forwards. So, yeah, it was, you know, it wasn't like something that I planned to do. It just, as I'm becoming a little bit more active on social, like I'm a bit more spontaneous. So it just came to me one day because of a bunch of conversations about authenticity. And sorry, the last thing I'll say is because I'm meeting so many founders now with xRave Ventures and I'm speaking with so many people who are starting businesses in media and music and stuff like that, and they're facing challenges and things like that, right? And it's a difficult journey, and so I thought, which community do I want to be aligned with? The people who are like doing shit and like honest about it, or do I want to align myself with the kind of performative fake kind of group? So I guess I'm trying to show
Great.
the people that I'm meeting that I understand what they're dealing with.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I would love to move forward to your current venture, xRave Ventures, and ask you how you got to the place to build xRave Ventures. I mean, previously, and also again, you're very open about it. You actually tried to build something in an entirely different space,
Yeah.
which didn't work. And now you're back in the content, media, music world through xRave Ventures. Could you explain to us what exactly it is that you're doing and maybe what gap you're trying to fill? I mean, you mentioned it early on in your introduction. Maybe bring us along what you guys do exactly and share a couple of words about that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, X-Ray Ventures is kind of like the company I wanted to work for, but like doesn't exist, basically. So X-Ray Ventures is a VC advisory business. Um, and it's different because I was like, what? How awesome would it be if there was like a VC advisory company that really, really, really understood, the media landscape and actually was tapped into culture, and could basically research this space and invest in this space so that like you could help people with incredible ideas in the creative economy to like grow their business. And it was inspired by my own unique life journey, because I've noticed along, we can get into my career, but like there's a gap between the kind of venture and business community and like the sort of like culture, digital innovation, like media platform community. These are like two different groups, and I've been part of both. The background that I had before Spotify is the same background that most people who are in like, conventional VC funds work in, or traditional investment funds, right? But it's a very small community. Like it's a very homogenous community, really, when you look at like the backgrounds of the people that work in the space, the type of schools they went to, the type of work experience they have, right? And then I've had the advantage of moving around all of these different places, being in one of the biggest media platforms in the world, being responsible for Spotify's market intelligence globally, right? Like during a really pivotal time of growth, in media consumption and the attention economy, and living in LA and seeing all of the creativity there, and realizing that nobody's really, really doing it like, at the intersection of both of these things. And I think one of the challenges, even that in my career I noticed, is that people really struggle to value culture, right? We're seeing now a lot of acquisitions of music catalogs by very, very institutional investors, but generally, people haven't really looked at like culture and sort of creativity in these things and being able to like value it properly and really understand it from a business lens. There's very, very few organizations that do this. And I know because I was responsible for basically trying to get all of the intel that I could globally on like what was happening at the forefront of the media space. I know that there are very few people doing that. So X-Ray Ventures basically exists to be the entity that connects those two spaces, and basically understand what is happening at the forefront of media and culture and innovation and bringing people together in that way. And how do you make a good business case out of these innovations? And how do you find investors for this? And ultimately, my vision is for X-Ray Ventures to be a fund itself, right? That when we find the next thing that's going to pop off, we can actually invest in that. So that's the vision, but it translates into a lot of different things. And honestly, like I think about it, you'll see on my LinkedIn, like there's even like a link to a playlist, like even like a soundscape for like the fund and stuff like this. Like I just think in order to really do that, you need to also be in the places where culture is happening. And that's what I don't think the conventional VC community is doing. You know, you have big VC funds now, like Andreessen Horowitz, that are like very tapped into like the power of media, and they created a flywheel to help their founders with media. But like, I don't still see VC funds that are truly like of culture and present in culture, who can see like where culture is headed and then connect founders with the right people and breathe oxygen into that. I don't see that. I think there are individuals, but I don't see it institutionally.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you brought up Andreessen Horowitz, right, with their new media strategy.
And I've
Because
been following Andreessen Horowitz for a long
yeah,
time, many years.
okay,
Yeah.
many years, okay. Because it's quite interesting. I've been talking about this to a lot of people because I've seen this What's New Media article. I've sort of become a bit obsessed about it and their idea that content, and now that gets ready into discussion, sort of into the media discussion. I'll be wondering what your take is on that. But content is not just, or media is not just content, but they see media as infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Media as infrastructure for network ecosystems, platforms, and especially a business like a VC, right, which relies on its business. It's quite crucial that they have sort of a media engine behind it, right, running to build this community. What's your thought? I mean, what's your thought on this new media world? I mean, you just mentioned you've been following Andreessen Horowitz for a while now. What's your take on Andreessen Horowitz and their new media strategy? Is it something that is very uniquely done only by Andreessen Horowitz, and other players are sort of neglecting it even, or the power of it?
So I think other players are definitely neglecting it. I am not super familiar with the current setup of their strategy. I'd have to look at it in detail. But what I pick up from what I'm observing from them is that they understand the dynamics of creative platforms, and they understood early, like what's your value, as a VC beyond capital. They understand that distribution for a lot of businesses now happens through media ecosystems. Whereas maybe before distribution might happen through bricks and mortar or certain partnerships or certain physical spaces, they understand that in order to grow and incubate a new product or service, you need to be able to reach millions of people through a very crowded media ecosystem space. So either you need to own your own ecosystems, or you need to have brands that are very prominent and powerful in the existing ecosystems. And so they have been investing in that early, and creating a framework that they can use repeatedly to help the founders that they invest in. Um, and there's a lot of different ways that you can think about that, right? Like, you can think about attention, it's like real estate. And so they're really well placed, right, to understand where attention will be next. And so you either need really effective strategies within the existing platforms that we have, the right partnerships, the right uh, own brands, with audiences that you can use to kind of push your founders that way, or you need to be aware of new platforms that are going to uh, basically capture attention and be present in those places. So that's the flywheel that they're creating. And from what I've seen, their flywheel is also like a system to enable founders to kind of get their own media presence up and going quickly, you know?
Mm.
And to do that, you need, to create a ton of content.
Mm. Mm. I'll be wondering very briefly, because you just mentioned attention is like real estate. Could you very briefly explain that? I mean, to what extent? Because that's an interesting
So
comparison that I've not heard yet.
So the way that I think about it, and the way that I used to look at it at Spotify, is you have 24 hours in the day, and maybe like 8 of those hours you're sleeping. Your media time is about 12.4 or maybe more hours of the day. And so all of these companies, this is basically real estate that they want to capture. And like physical real estate, media real estate is limited. And I think real estate is a really good word to use because it captures the kind of the scarcity of it. And so whether you're talking about time, whether you're talking about real estate in terms of like a screen, like with the Spotify product, for example, like we would even speak internally about real estate, right? You only have so much pixels and space which to present to the user. And so that is how I think about media and media ecosystems. It's about real estate, and real estate is basically the amount of inventory that you have, and the amount of inventory that you have is like the amount of information that you can take in at any one time, which is kind of a function of your time and a function of how many things you can pay attention to in an individual second. And it's limited. It's a fixed resource. But with certain tech developments, like uh, it's changing. So you can talk a lot about things like multitasking. So like Netflix, for example, is very aware that like when somebody's watching Netflix, they're usually on their phone at the same time. So there's lots of different ways you can think about like real estate, but it is ultimately it's a fixed resource that's not expanding as quickly as people would like to capture it. So a lot of the business strategies between these tech companies is the battle to capture your real estate, your attention real
Mhm.
estate.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
absolutely makes tons of sense. I mean, I would love to. I mean, it's we're a bit time constrained as well here on this podcast, so also limited resources, our time. A lot
Yeah, this is the
I'd love
thing.
to.
Each of these topics, it's like you could talk about it for
Yeah,
like half an hour and really get into it.
yeah, yeah. Maybe briefly. I mean, I'd love to hear a couple of words from you. Maybe with related to media, music, or community. What's happening right now that most people are maybe not paying attention to that excites you particularly? Is there maybe even something related to AI that you would love to share with the audience? Any vision or let's say bets you're having for the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited about AI in the media landscape, in and of its ability to kind of connect people or help people to express themselves to each other. So one of the companies that I invested in recently called GenFeed is basically aggregating all of the top AI video storytellers in the world. And the reason why I think this is really exciting is because now we're in this, we talk a lot about AI content, AI slop, but there's also this incredible possibility of like, what if you were able to make like a film about X, right? And now you can create like Hollywood grade kind of movies about all these new things and these new stories that were not previously possible. And what that means is there's a ton of creators that are going to come online in parts of the world that previously didn't have access to like, filmmaking infrastructure. And you're going to see all of these really incredible stories getting told that weren't previously possible. A little bit like with podcasting, I think. Um, and so this company GenFeed is working to basically pull together all of the top creators in the world and create a destination where you can experience the best storytelling in the world through this new medium. So I'm excited about that. In the music space specifically, there's a lot of hot debate about AI, right? Because the really sensitive part of it is we have these incredible new tools like Suno that can enable you to create really catchy tunes and really, really cool songs without needing traditional like music abilities, which is really cool. But the problem or the sensitivity is around the licensing and what music these models are trained on. And so it's really important that creators and artists are kind of compensated for their work and that their work is not basically stolen. But within that whole kind of discussion, which is it's probably going to continue for some time, what I'm really excited about is I'm seeing a lot of like localized versions of tracks, which I think is super cool. And I discover a lot of these actually on TikTok at the moment. And so there's like a channel I follow where like there was like a Turkish version of like Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso and also songs by like Pink Panthers and Drake. And I'm seeing a lot of this type of like translation of you have a pop song maybe from America or one part of the world, and somebody's localized it to like a really kind of authentic local version of the song. And I think I'm very excited about the potential of that technology to kind of bring communities together, because, these things kind of music is already a medium that connects communities and we get connected because we can relate to what the artist is expressing, right? And what they're trying to say in their music. And I think to the degree that we can do that more, to the degree that AI can help artists, even, or someone in Japan or somebody in South Korea can discover an artist from like Spain and kind of make it sort of their own and make it even more relatable to like a local audience. I think that technology is really exciting, I think.
Interesting. I think another thing that I would like to touch base on very, very briefly is, I mean, now you are in the media, music, community space, and it's not only digital, right? There's also an analog element, I would argue, right? And we're seeing this
There
real
is.
hunger also among, after COVID, right? We
Yes.
are sort of in a loneliness epidemic, right? People are craving real in-person experiences, and
Yes.
also we're seeing we're seeing also the downsides of, things like social media, right? I mean, it has its
100%.
downsides. What role do you think real life connection plays in, let's say, the broader media, music, and community landscape? What do you
Huge,
see there
huge
happening?
role, a huge role. And, even though my career has been closely related with like media platforms, I'm very, very active and integrated with also people who are innovating in the live space as well. Because I think these two things go together. I think the thing that's really exciting is like historically we've looked at like physical businesses and things like this as very separate to online, right? And there's been like the digital world and the online companies in the online world, and then there's been the physical space in the physical world. And in reality, I think this is going to be like a hybrid. It's not going to be one or the other. And if you're a live business, you need like a strong digital component. And if you're a digital business, people want to do things and need to be doing things in the physical space as well. You cannot just exist online. And anywhere that you are now, you have your phone, right? Like all the time. You're always in the digital and the physical space at the same time. So when I think of media, I think of media platforms and I think of culture. Live is extremely important, right? Because live spaces is, where culture is created, right? Like physical, spaces where people meet, it's often where you can discover new music or new artists. It's where you can meet other people. It's where you are connected with your community. And the balance of it, I think because of what's happened with digital innovation in the last 15 years, people have become very disconnected. We have spent less time in physical spaces. Like I'm speaking specifically at this point about like music, clubbing, things like this. The nightlife economy has been really threatened economically for a variety of reasons. But at the same time, I think the balance is changing because we are experiencing massive social media fatigue. We're experiencing all these kind of demographic challenges because people as a society, we're starting to realize the value of having physical spaces to actually meet each other and be together. I think going forwards, the discovery of those spaces will happen online. So even when we talk about the most innovative cultural experiences that enable us to come together as humans, as members of society, to discover and create culture, and to meet each other. Um, Digital is a big part of that because the discovery of those things is still going to happen most likely in digital environments where we spend most of our time. So I'm really excited by and I'm inspired by a lot of the founders that I meet that are building new businesses that recognize the duality of this, and they're building, for example, Keep Hush, another company that I've invested in, organizes raves all around the world. Millions of people tune into their events. And what they do, which I think is incredible, is they spotlight uh, cutting edge musicians and DJs and artists from around the world in places like Kazakhstan, India, Japan, Colombia, these types of places, and create in-person real life events where the community can come together, where young people can come together and really discover the best underground music. But then those events are also live streamed, and there is also an online membership
Mm.
aspect to it. And it enables them to platform artists because if you're an artist, and you're playing live, but a big part of like running your business as an artist is also reaching your audience and distributing your music. So, how do they do that? They create a channel basically for artists from these places to find a global audience. So I think the best businesses are really kind of doing a combination of both, like understanding where is culture online and where is culture offline, and creating really unique experiences that combine the two.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. I mean, that's something I'm not from the industry per se, right? Not like you, but that's something that resonates with me a lot. This idea of building these hybrid things, between digital and analog, and building a digital world that also has a transition or then translates to real world experiences, right? That sounds quite
Yeah, it's like
fascinating. Yeah.
it's with technology, right? Like we're really struggling with like what place do we want technology to be in our lives? Because people we discovered some of the negative aspects, right? But the reality is that it's not going to go away. Like technology is going to be a very integrated part of how we live. And so I think the most exciting companies are the ones who acknowledge this, but can also help to provide useful technology in your life while enabling you to still be like present and plugged into the real world, not trying to take you completely out of reality, which has been the risk with some of our digital experiences recently and the addictiveness of social media. But how can technology be integrated into your life that enables you to do more of what you love, but also to really live, to live your life like with the people and the environment around you?
Amazing. Bradley, I mean, I would love to talk a lot more about whatever excites you in the media space. I know that's your main topic. I mean, we connected through that, but also through, your career and how you approach it. And we're, again, also here in the business of real estate because I'm doing a podcast and we're time restricted. Maybe final questions. I'd also love to learn more about, again, hear a couple of words about how you build your career and maybe how you approach your career. I mean, something that fascinated me personally was more and more how athletes actually approach their careers, right? They have coaches, they have support systems. They really also emphasize things like recovery and not just, performance, and being stressed out all the time and having chronic stress, but they really value also recovery. They have mental coaches. Do you have something like that in place, or do you have a support system around you, or are you very intentional about how you approach your career, and does that differ, let's say, fundamentally from the past?
Yeah, it definitely differs fundamentally from the past. And I would say I'm a very intentional person in terms of how I spend my time and the choices I make now. And I don't think enough people are. I think the analogy that you use with athletes is great. I don't know that I'm necessarily there yet in terms of like an athlete will have a nutritionist, a therapist, like a coach, but I think if you can do that, and I think the most successful people, even in the business world, they recognize this. And I would say like I have a low budget version, right? Like of this. And maybe if I'm lucky enough to be super successful, I will invest more in this. But like take diet, for example. I used to eat really unhealthily. I'm a lot more intentional with how I eat. And my solution for that, without being able to afford a nutritionist, is having like a meal delivery plan that I work with that kind of keeps my diet, delightful for me, but also healthy. Like with working out, like some people will get like a PT. For me, what works for me is I have a couple of studios that I like going to, and I get, classes that basically I know when I go to this place, I'm going to burn like a shit ton of calories and I enjoy going and it's like a release for me, I think like basically, sleep is something that I had a very bad relationship with my whole life. I'm much more intentional about like my sleep, the power of sleep, the restorative power of sleep. I do yoga, things like this. And so I think I think the analogy you're using with the athletes is I think a lot of people can kind of take aspects of that. And I think what you're really speaking about is when you look at what is a kind of healthy life and what is a successful life, it's not necessarily just about like having as much money as you possibly can, you know, which is a very basic reductive way of looking at it. You know, your life as you live it, it's your relationships, it's your health, it's like your body, it's your mind, you know, it's like the thoughts that you're having. It's, are you learning new things? Are you good at what you do? And like all these different aspects of your life. And I think to the extent that you're able to, building systems or having people or teams that can help you with each of these aspects of your life. And this is something that I think if you speak to the richest person in the richest people in the world, or the people with the most resources, they will probably have a team of people that help them with these things. But ultimately, it relies on you kind of being intentional about how do you feed all of these aspects of your life that are important to being healthy and sustainable growth for you. Um, so so yeah, and for me personally, yeah, I live completely in a different way than I did maybe like 15 years ago. Like the level of intentionality from like how I spend my time, the type of work I do, who I associate with, what I expose myself to, how I look after my body, what I put in my body, like, you know, uh, it's much more intentional.
I have another question a bit related to that. Something that I've noticed, I mean, now you have this classical background going to consulting, performative background, people
Mm,
try to over optimize their careers, their CVs, their
yeah.
internships, their first workstations, whatever. And then you run into a burnout. And something I notice is, since I've started out in the longevity space, people, try to optimize their careers and then they try to optimize their health and then they run into the
Yeah.
next burnout. And also maybe culture sometimes gives you this, illusion that that's how it works, right? You need to over optimize it. You need to over optimize your health. You need to get those kind of supplements, sleep
Yeah.
those kind of hours, go to that, it's just very, very overwhelming for a lot of people. And something that I would like to ask you now is I feel most of the things that are good to us also come through the environments that we're in, right? It's just that, if you just mentioned it, you go to class, work, you do classes, you book classes for your workouts, for instance. Um, I'll be wondering, how has, your environment shaped you? May it be in your career, may it be in your health and performance. Was there maybe, I mean, you mentioned LA, right? I was also in Los Angeles. It was really profound for me. Were there maybe any people around you that have impacted you? I would love to hear maybe that perspective, instead of just hearing the things you did.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just another perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think every environment that you're in, you can learn from, basically. And I've had the fortune of being in a lot of different environments and being around a lot of different types of people. Uh, and you can learn something from everybody and from everywhere that you are. So then your question was whether there were specific people who've impacted me, or
I mean, you can actually, it's a very open question. If there were any specific people or specific environments that have really sort of shaped you to the person you are, because I wanted to focus more on environments instead of just, um, asking you to give, the 10 rules of life hacks that anyone can do to optimize themselves, but rather focusing on the environments that have shaped you.
yeah, they've all shaped me. I'm trying to think of a really condensed way to like to say. I think I can talk about a few different specific environments and cultures that I've been in. And so, you know, if I think about the early part of my career, and for example, being in like an investment banking environment or even a consulting environment, this was really valuable because this was a certain type of culture where you follow through. Like it's a certain type of culture where you don't really have any excuses. It's a certain type of culture where you're reliable and you're very locked in. And I think you learn a lot of discipline in those types of environments. And, you know, have I met, you know, I've met people in those environments, you know, that have really inspired me, you know. I was working with somebody at a private equity fund after I graduated university, and this person was like, you know, late 20s, like had their family already, was like a top business person, and like I just remember being really inspired by this person and like really wanting to emulate some of the behaviors of this person. So this was like one aspect of like my character that, being in those environments and around certain people that really shaped me. Then Sweden, I lived in Sweden for 4 years, and this was a completely different value system, and a different cultural framework that I was embedded in, and that shaped me also. That was really a period of my life where I understood work-life balance, and I understood the thing that in Sweden I think is really appreciated is this kind of considered craftsmanship. It's like you can be interested in something and you can be good at something technically because it's a very technically skilled country, and you can take pride in the work that you do. And that doesn't have to be the same as like working 24 hours a day and having a really toxic relationship with work. It can be kind of being a skilled technician and respecting other people, respecting other people's input, and kind of being part of a community and sort of everybody doing their little bit and understanding how they can contribute and being respected to do that. And I think Sweden really taught me that. LA is another environment again, and I think being around American people, taught me a lot. Americans are very good at selling and very good at, having the confidence to kind of promote things and project and having the sort of vision to innovate and do like new businesses that haven't existed before. And so I think being in LA as well, which is by its nature like a very creative focused space, really taught me about just being maybe more in tune with like other aspects of myself, and kind of, you know, um, maybe more like individual or more kind of artistic, and I don't think I had been in a sort of artistic space for many years before I moved to LA, and being around a lot of people that are much more artistic in their nature, so I don't know if that's a great answer to the question, but like for me in my life, like different environments, putting yourself in different environments which attract different types of people, and learning from people in those spaces is really valuable. And I think everyone should do it.
Oh, that's great. I think it's a great answer, and it reminds people that any environment is sort of can be very valuable, and you can take a lot of lessons from it.
Yeah, I
Bradley,
think the last thing that I would just say
uh,
about that is that I think people sometimes, if you ever somebody that feels out of place, you know, you need to kind of do this exercise to learn more about yourself as well. Because a lot of people, they don't realize that there are so many different types of spaces and environments, and that you might be suited to one more than the other.
absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you very much for sharing that. It's a great reminder also for me personally. And Bradley, I would have loved to ask a lot more questions. Maybe final question, because we're here coming to an end. Is there anything you would like to share to the audience? May it be about xRave Ventures, about media, about AI, or about you personally? Anything that comes up to your mind you would love to share? Feel free to do
I
that
think
now.
if anybody's listening to this, and if you are building something incredible in media or culture, and you think it's going to be, shift the space, I would love to connect with you and learn what you're working on. If you're an investor and you're interested in investing in this space, let's talk. I might know some interesting people or opportunities for you. And watch this space.
Amazing. Hey, Bradley, thank you very much, and hope to hear from you soon again.
Thank you, Toby.